Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do not forget to do so, as we would like to develop this beautiful endeavor that we have started upon. What can I say, Sanders? Thank you so much for your willingness to be a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. And This just happened kind of like organically as well. I just reached out to you.
Yes,
It's a podcast on education, on
yes,
secondary school in particular, but obviously we'll have a chance to discuss, things like the journey that you went on afterwards, obviously, because
yes,
you're a native American
yes,
citizen.
yes,
So I'm very curious about your life story, so to
yes,
say.
yes,
Would you like to take a trip down memory lane with me?
yes. I'm originally from Augusta, Georgia. I was born in 1967, and yeah, Bible Belt, Deep South. And yeah, my father was he was a Korean War veteran, and my mother had worked in as a nurse in a mental hospital. And so they both came out of the South as well. They grew up in the time of Jim Crow segregation, and I'm the youngest of seven. I have four brothers and two sisters. And yeah, there are three brothers that are still alive, and one sister that's still alive. And yeah, I grew up in the time when yeah, I didn't have to go through the Jim Crow segregation like did.
Luckily.
Right, and I when I was born, I was born with full American citizenship rights, unlike my brothers and sisters. But I grew up in a neighborhood where there was most African American community. It was an it was a great place for me to have grown up in, and I grew up next to the church, and there were people in the neighborhood who were, some of them were also educators, and there was large families in the neighborhood, and it was for me it was a great time growing up. There was also some hardships, of course, but I wouldn't change anything considering the way I grew up.
And from what I can hear as well is that there was a very, let's say, a profound sense of community as well, right?
Yes,
In that time, yeah.
there was. I mean, of course, growing up the way I did, there was in the neighborhood, yeah, particular for everyone, particularly my family, there was a lot of strictness, discipline. I mean, and so like in my parents' home, it was like two things got you in trouble quickly, very quickly: lying and stealing. And it was, I say, it was more like a conservative type, since the South is more conservative. Like in my parents' house, like my older brother and sister, if they brought someone there, they were in the living room. They sat in the living room. Like it was like, yeah, as far as like if you weren't married or whatever, sleeping over,
Wasn't
no,
the case.
no,
No, no, no,
no,
no,
not in their house.
no, no.
That's just how it was.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, as a child, being the youngest, you learn from things. You see, it's like the right and wrong. It was always visible in our home. And so, but there was also a time like like you had to come home from school. You had to start studying before you can go outside. And it was always there. You knew right and wrong all the time. And in spite of all the like the strictness and that carry over also in the classroom. Like, well, my first couple of years when I was I remember my grade school years, like my mother was my mother was classmates. She had been herself classmate with one of my teachers, Miss West, who's still alive. And so matter of fact, she Miss West was the she's the aunt of Lawrence Fishburne, the actor from Morpheus from Matrix. She's his aunt, and she was really strict. I mean, but she didn't take any of my all of my teachers growing up. They had zero tolerance for sloppiness, or you make like a half-ass mistakes or whatever, like lazy mistakes. like the if you made like a lowercase I, letter I, and that's always has to be capitalized. If you did that, um, you couldn't go outside for recess. You have to just give you a piece of paper. You sit in the hallway, write the capital I's. It has to be on one side and the other side the same way. They didn't tolerate that. I mean, they had all grown up during Jim Crow segregation, so they had to deal with. So they had to let us know that nothing will be given to us. That we had to earn everything, and that's something that I've taken through my life as well. And these are things that, if I look at today, there's a lot of tolerance for certain little lazy mistakes, but for myself, it's not. It's just, taking nothing for granted.
Yeah, especially within that context as well, because if you talk about Jim Crow segregation, I mean, probably there isn't or wasn't in time of history a bigger form of inequality between races,
Exactly.
as
Exactly.
was displayed back then, right? So
Exactly.
you could, let's say, from a current point of view, you could say, well, what does that capital I,
Exactly.
what big of a deal is that?
Exactly.
But you had to do, you had to do everything right in order for you to just
Exactly.
to excel, right? To be able
Exactly.
to exist within that specific context.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's like you have to. My teachers, I remember they stressed. Well, maybe indirectly, they stressed like, as a African American child, um, nothing's going to be given to you. You have to earn everything. For example, my parents could not afford to send me to college. I was blessed with being tall. I was blessed with having the ability to play basketball. So eventually, when there was an opportunity to do so, I earned a basketball scholarship, a 4-year paid education. That was the only way I could have gotten to college. It was either that or join the military. And then eventually I had to get a GI Bill to be able to get to college. And speaking of GI Bill, my father, who had fought in the Korean War, when he came back home, he would have been eligible for a GI Bill. But there was one problem. He couldn't just walk into the bank. He had to he if he would have walked into the bank, they would have called the cops on him. So he had to he worked. He eventually got a job with the VA hospital in police and security, because during the war he had been a military police officer. He used to that had to guard the barracks. So eventually, that's what he had to do. He had to scrape everything, save all the money he had, and he had his first marriage. His first wife had passed away. I had, like, my two oldest brothers and my oldest sister. They he had to eventually he had to leave them with my grandmother. He lived like an hour away, and so he eventually had to leave when he found some property next to who was eventually my grandparents' house, and that's how he met my mother. So eventually he had to scrape and save a little small piece of land, which he was able to build our house on. That's where I grew up, along with two brothers and a sister. So these are the things they had to face, but these are things which were ingrained in me, where, like, as far as like working for everything you have, because some of us had to run faster, work harder, jump higher, and also ask how high. But do I feel like, okay, am I did I become a better person for that? I think I probably did. And and did that help me with my path, my journey further? And probably did, in spite of not liking some of the experiences I had to go through, which I will cover later.
Obviously, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's a very strange paradox, right? You want to protect children from, let's say, from being in a harmful or hostile environment, but at
Yes,
the same time, as you are stating,
yes,
that type of hostility also, let's say, paved the way towards, let's say, personal growth in a sense, right?
yes, it did. It did. I think that really helped me to be a more a better human being, to also, like to fuel my passion in life. To eventually, when I was able to find something where I could channel that passion into, like with basketball, I was able to use that. When the seeds were planted, I was able to make that grow, and that became a large part of my identity, which eventually led to other things.
Yeah, yeah. That your basketball journey, did it start around secondary school or was it prior to that?
It started when I was 12 years old,
12 years old.
and then like I eventually, what got me into basketball was watching. It was a basketball game between I was Michigan State, Indiana. It was a NCAA championship game, 1979. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and watching that game. And
Classic.
yes, and then Dr. J, Julius Erving, Dr. J, that eventually watching it on television, that was like something I was like, yeah, maybe it's something that I could do, eventually do. And then I wasn't yet at the height. I thought, okay, well, I mean, my grandfather is the same height as me, like 2'4". He was same size, and then eventually when I came around 14 years old, I hit a growth spurt. And I think I grew like 15 centimeters within a 1 to 2 year period. But I was not a person that was very confident. I was more like introverted, low self-esteem. All of a sudden, I was growing, and then like felt, clumsy and was insecure, and then I was really like I was trying to get away. My father wanted me to join the military. Eventually, he thought, going with
As he did too, right?
as he
Yeah,
did, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But I didn't think that was for me. And at our school we had it was like a junior reserves officer training military course you could take. So I did that for a couple of years. But then the clothing I had, it was not really, the clothing was not meant for tall people. It's just not really like the pants legs were like a little bit, always a little bit too short.
Yeah, yeah.
Then it's just like I was really like a bean pole, and so but I was gawky. I couldn't really, I wasn't really that coordinated. But I thought, okay, basketball, once I could do that, then maybe that would help me more. But my basketball coach at the time, Don Brock, it was his name. He said something to me once, like he took me home. He took me into practice because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. So then he drove me home, and I looked out the window most of the time. But then he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, "You can never be the best if you beat someone that you're better than you are." So he said you always have to try to challenge the ones that are better than you. And so that's what made an impact on started to make an impact. So, but it was a tough love period generation I came from. All the teachers I had, including basketball coaches, they did not have the compassion really what was needed, but I can't fault them for that when I think about it now, because they didn't have that themselves. They had to go through the same thing my grandparents had to go through. They had to go to segregated schools. They had their parents had to pay for taxes for textbooks, biased textbooks that didn't teach them anything about their culture. They had to they had to go in schools with poorly lit schools. The water didn't run properly. The plumbing didn't always work. It was cold in the winter time. It was hot in the summertime. They had to have secondhand textbooks that they had that pages were torn out of. There was things written in there. These racial slurs were written in the books. They had to go through all of that. So I can understand them not just saying we got to go in there, we have to push it, at the use the type nuances that that might have been unfriendly, but it's funny. I find myself now being a teacher, a lot of those nuances that I'm coming back to, referring back to, but even though not with 4 letter words in there, like with my coach, he would use, but um, but all of these things are what I think that's made such a huge impact in my life. All that tough love and all that. But I don't think it really did. I like it? No, not all the time. But do I think I needed it? I'll say yes. I probably did. It wasn't. I rarely got to hear what I wanted to hear, but I always got what I needed to hear.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah. 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 Obviously, it's not a context that I am familiar with in the direct sense
yes,
of the word. But you're touching upon so many things. I mean, your teachers,
yes,
to start with. I mean, they also, as you described, they had to cope with the circumstances that would give it to them as well, right?
yes, yes,
And you growing up and having to juggle all these things. I mean, going to school,
yes,
attending basketball practice, and
yes,
making sure that you fit in, and especially describing yourself as being sort of like starting out a bit clumsy.
yes,
I could
yes.
imagine that was also on that specific point a very challenging time in a
It was.
sense, right?
It was because I mean, yeah, being unique because normally like being the tallest one is like you don't have as many around like that,
No,
and sometimes wishing that I could be like average person. You always get an attention, unwanted attention. Still do, but it was like the time walking the halls, people like saying stuff, like or people expecting you like to be able to dunk a basketball just because you're tall. And you need the coordination to do that. You need to the proper timing. You need the proper footwork. You need the muscle twitches, the strength and all that, the core strength and all that to be able to perform that. But there was all these kind of expectations. But then also there was kind of jealousy there because I really like one time, I had teammates. I had to deal with the I dealt with bullying from in the like with teammates and everything. People they say like hazing or whatever. I dealt with that, and then my Coach Brock said to me, they're jealous of you. They're only doing that because they know that you're going to make it, and they're not. And another thing he said to me, never lower yourself to the level of someone who has less to lose than you do. So all of these things made an impression on me. And so, while now I take that as a blessing, being tall, because I mean, like we always got the comments like yeah, how's the weather up there? All these kind of comments like that. I mean, at that time, I wouldn't have dared to say anything about it. I would, but yeah, if I was to say something about that, if I thought the same way now as I back then, I would have just grabbed a cup of water. I say it's raining up here. You're getting wet down there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it was like the like I was an extremely shy person, and I didn't have much confidence. But as I see now, my 13-year-old son is he's playing basketball, and I see how he is compared to me, how I was at the same age, and he's way more confident on the court than I was at the same age. Off the court, he's like me. We're both kind of introverted types, but on the court, he's gaining more confidence. He's at the phase now where he's finding that passion in the game. He's finding that mental toughness, and he's also finding that in the classroom as well. So that's great to see.
Yeah, and I could imagine too that it must have, it also took you to overcome that in order for you to pass that on, right?
That's right. Yes, tremendously. Yeah, because certain things, I came in this generation like my parents. They were so preoccupied with segregation, and they they rarely found the time to talk to us. It was hard for them to talk about things. And my father, he was always working. He worked in shifts. He worked day shifts, evening shifts, night shifts. Um, a lot of times they slept when they weren't working, and they drank when they weren't sleeping. It's like sometime when your my parents would have friends coming over, I had to go to my room. The adults had to be in the room. But then you feel like when they're having a conversation, I can hear the reverberation. You feel like the vibes, like it was, like they were people frustrated because of work. My father had worked, he worked for the U.S. government for 43 years, and it wasn't until he was 30 years further that he was able to get a promotion. All these things, and when he was for the same work, but he was passed over for white colleagues that came in that had far less experience. But it wasn't until later that he was able to get a higher promotion. So all these things, but they had to go through this. They had to endure these things. It was hard for me to understand why, but like why I wasn't, passed, things weren't passed over. But then for myself, I had my first child. I had difficulties with that at first. She's 27 years old. She's living on, but I would like to think that I passed on certain things with her and also with my son that much more than what I had to endure.
Yeah, yeah, I could imagine, and especially also that their circumstances are quite the opposite right now, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
so obviously they don't need the exact same upbringing, but I could imagine that certain elements of the things that you had to endure and overcome and develop yourself in is can be very instrumental to their development as well.
Yes, and I like to think that I think a lot of us parents we want to have our children to pass on something to them more than what we got from our parents. That we want to be able to make it better life for them better than we have. We want to have that. I think a lot of them want to have that, and to like, I mean, not particularly like financial or monetary, but also like being a good person, a moral person, and a decent human being, and some knowing right from wrong, everything we've given and all that, so we're able to pass it on, so they can benefit from that and make their lives better and their children's lives better.
Hopefully, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah, because we are, especially Jim Crow segregation does seem like a world that's very far away. But if you're looking at things that are happening in Gaza, for instance, right now,
yes,
I
exactly.
mean, it's heart wrenching in a sense, right? And
It
you
is.
and
It is. I
yeah,
mean, it's very it's sad. I mean, watch the news. For example, someone people dying for standing in line to get a cup of water or a slice of bread or something. Think about the psychological impacts, the mental impacts. Like what it has to affect the children. I mean, hospitals are being bombed. It's awful, and we're all God's children. So none of this makes any sense, in a lot of ways. But it's not only that, and also and where you don't really see on the news, other places that's happening, and same thing in my own country as well. Like now with what's happening with those that are of color, people being snatched off the streets with ICE, and all this horror stories going on. Like I, like it's gotten to a point now where it's hard for me to watch the news, and I listen to podcasts, to get the right, get the right information.
yeah, yeah. You want to get it from
Yes.
people that you perceive as being an authority in
So, yes.
in on the theme that they're speaking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
If I were to ask you what your time during secondary school really brought you, let's say, in the realm of, let's say, personal development
Yes.
and personal growth. How would you respond to such a question?
I think that I think as me, like I said earlier, like with the influence of well, I was influenced, well, rather influence of my teachers, that that they that they accept a zero tolerance for things, like lazy mistake, half laziness, half-ass stuff, not going through the motions, and that helped me to realize for myself. I think it was just a lot of things that they helped me with that I didn't know I had within myself, because it was more like, okay, I was in my own bubble, and I was busy with like trying to find myself, and the way I was growing into my body. And I think that that all the struggles of like having to deal with that, and also there was a lot of it was just a lot of discipline and everything. I would like to think that the discipline I already had at home, and it was all the same. It was no different there. The discipline I got from my teachers, particularly the black teachers, it was the same. It's the same impact. And I think in that sense, I didn't really. I was thinking of myself as being a disciplined person. I think that was something I already had. I didn't have to be told what to do multiple times. I knew what the consequences would be for certain behaviors. I mean, I had a father home. I did so. He kicked my ass. That's just what it was. I mean, I was just, I was, it was something I had to be afraid of. You had to have something to be afraid of. You had to have something that, okay, consequences like certain behaviors. If you don't do it, you're gonna have a problem. But you either do it or you don't. And I think that was those kind of factors what helped me as a person grow up. But like, I just needed direction. I just needed someone to just say to me like, yeah, you can do this. And I was fortunate that I had somebody that told me these things, and I listened to that person. I had a coach that said you need to jump rope. He gave me a hose pipe. I said I don't have a jump rope. He gave me a hose pipe, one of those, cut off the hose pipe. He said go in there, go outside and jump a rope or something. There's no excuse not to be able to get something done. And so, or it gave me like one of those extension cords. Go outside. You got do something to make yourself better. It's like you're either going to get better or you're going to get worse. And I'll point on that again in the future. Like being an educator is the same way. This, like, for example, at a time like this is the off season, like for us teachers. And I see it like as a basketball season. This is the off season as well. And this is the time you get better as a basketball player. This is the time to get better or you get worse. And I try to always have to do that, because someone told me a long time ago, when you're not working, somebody else is. And when you two are going to meet up, with all things being equal, that person will win. So it's always about these things being, having something to be afraid like something that you have in your own control, yeah, that you can make yourself better with. And so, having that risk of losing that, and losing that opportunity, because you never know who's watching you. And that's what I had with basketball. You never know who's watching you. And when I think about that, when I had the opportunity, like what got me an opportunity that carried me on that path was when I went to a basketball camp. It was in 1984. It was and so my mother paid $250 to send me there.
Yeah.
My coach had recommended me to go there to that basketball camp. He said to me, uh, don't think about all this stuff about trying to score and everything. First thing you got to think about is playing defense and playing rebound and rebounding the ball. And so, because there are going to be people there watching you, so you have to take that opportunity. I had teammates that said to me, "You just wasting your money. Don't go there waste your money, because you're not going to do anything." He told me that. And then I went to the basketball camp, and I thought I did well, but then a week later I had lots of letters from, well, maybe a few weeks later. I had all these letters my coach had in the office. He said, these schools, these are the letters that these schools that are interested in you. And so, that's what, my confidence grew. And so, and also something to work for. And eventually I was able to get to Campbell University, that's in North Carolina. I had a scholarship, and that's what led me further.
A basketball scholarship,
Basketball
obviously.
scholarship,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yes. That was my opportunity. So it's like things, but it always stayed with me about that point about always, like if you're not working, somebody else is.
Yeah, it made me think of Mike Tyson as well. In the
Yeah,
early days, the Customado days,
exactly.
he would get up really early and start running for his
Exactly.
conditioning, obviously.
Exactly.
And the most gratifying, I've heard this in interviews, but he said the most gratifying thing is the realization that I am working right now,
Exactly.
knowing that my opponent is asleep.
Exactly. Exactly. And his man Customato said to him also, the difference is between a hero and a coward. There is no difference. They both are afraid to get hurt, and they're both afraid to die. But it's what the hero does that is what one does that makes him a hero. Is what one doesn't do is what makes him a coward.
Wow, wow, wow. Beautifully put. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel. You have no idea what one simple click will do for the future of this endeavor. How did you end up here in the Netherlands?
Well, it was like okay, I had first come to a tournament. I had played in Luxembourg, and we had an Easter weekend tournament in Rijswijk, and then and then eventually I met an American that was at that time he was playing. He had been in that tournament. He was married to his wife or ex-wife. They lived in Zoetermeer. So he invited me to come up after the season was over. I came up and stayed. I was here for a month, and then so I was looking around because I was looking to move on. So and then eventually I met someone that was an agent. He eventually got me a team in Urk. So I started playing basketball in the Urk where there were at the time they had the Eredivisie team. And so that's how I got my start. And then eventually I had met it was my first wife. She lived in Meppel. And so that kind of started the journey from there. And so that's how it eventually started.
Yeah,
Playing in Urk.
yeah, beautiful.
And so and eventually I played in other countries. Like at first I thought that at the time the Netherlands was more like a bridge type country with basketball. You come here and then you eventually can get to higher paid countries, like you can get to France or Germany or Sweden or Spain or where other higher profitable countries. So and then so eventually like something I thought I would be here for 1 year, but eventually it turned into 34 years. And I'll tell you a funny story. I kind of had a premonition like moment when I was 7 years old. My mother had bought these encyclopedias for us, for all of us to read, and so there was all these little stories in there. And eventually, I saw something about the Netherlands, and there was a story about the boy that put his finger in the dike. I forget the author's name of that, but eventually, this boy he saved the Netherlands. 7 years old, and I saw these things. I saw these pictures of Netherlands people wearing wooden shoes, and then windmills, lived in windmills, and that's what kind of thing I was thinking. That was my first impression. That was like a premonition that it was eventually going to end up in the Netherlands.
Wow.
And but getting back to my point, there was just, and that was the path. That's how eventually my path was here in the Netherlands, was through Urk and to everything everywhere else, and and having children here, and so eventually from there, after I stopped playing basketball, eventually my basketball career ended in Zwolle by Landstede in 2001, and eventually led to where I am now.
Yeah, because you're an educator right now, right? I mean,
Yes,
you teach English.
yes,
I've read a beautiful piece around your, let's say, development that you sent me, right?
yes, yes,
Where you draw these beautiful parallels between, let's
yes,
say, the art and sports of basketball
yes,
and the things that are required and needed within the classroom.
yes.
How was your educational journey?
As far as being here in the Netherlands as a education, well, it's kind of like I had spent prior to that. I had spent like several years working in I did social work here at risk children. I had worked at a reform school like Glen Mill School. I had done that for 5 years, and then eventually I had worked at a youth detention center, Porch and Faint House, and I had worked with autistic children. So it kind of got like, well, at the point I had worked for many years doing that, and then eventually it was a tumultuous time. It was enjoyable. It was a really learning uh, time, which I learned a lot about group dynamics and also working with the youth. And but it was also a tumultuous time where I had gone through a divorce. My mother had passed away, and eventually led to a burnout. And so I just couldn't do this anymore. It was like a lot. You put in all that work and effort into it, and then all these irregular hours, and so I had a reintegration coach at the time. And I had conversations with him, and he threw the idea to me. It's like, well, about your next step. So you're okay. Look, you're a person who you've worked with youth. You had basketball, and you worked with youth. You speak the language. You're a native English speaker. Why don't you try to go into education? So be an English teacher here. And I thought for myself, like at first I thought, there's no way I wanted to be an English teacher. My father wanted me to come back home. He didn't like me to play overseas. He wanted me to go back to America, to come back to America, and to become a basketball coach and a teacher, which is what I eventually did anyway. But I did it here.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, but eventually, getting back to the point, I when I had the opportunity to do that, I was coaching basketball in Swola at Lonsdale, and so one of my players was his father was a director at one of the schools in Lonsdale schools, and so he eventually, like a year later, when I stopped coaching there, he asked me to if I could. He was a chairman of a smaller basketball club, so he asked me if I could coach the club team, the men's team, and I said I'll do it under one condition: if you could help me to get like what they call Zion Stroman.
Yeah.
If he can help me get a position, I said, well, the quid pro quo. You get something for something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So then I was fortunate to get that opportunity, and so that's how. And at first I had I had a few teaching hours at school in Ralta. It was like MBO, and so that's kind of how I got my start there, doing that.
And you, I think you're a teacher right now at the one of the international schools that the
Yes,
Netherlands has,
yes,
right?
in the international school in Almere,
Yeah, yeah.
and
How are your experiences there? Because I could imagine, because your upbringing must have been very different, let's say, than the upbringing of the young children that you are teaching currently.
yes,
And and also we've touched upon the different parallels that that you let's say that you between basketball and secondary school education, right, in a
yes,
sense.
yes.
What's your approach and how are your experiences being a teacher here right now?
Well, it's like my approach. I mean, yeah. Well, I had to get knocked down a lot and then get back up. I think I've been knocked down 1,000 times in my teaching experiences, like compared to the beginning. But I've gotten up at least 1,001. And I think having the background with the basketball, with the disciplines that were involved, and all that was like about all the experiences I had about like kind of no nonsense approaches. And I think that's helped me a lot now. I mean, like I'm working in the Almira, it's like IB education, and students are expat students and different backgrounds, different nationalities. I think we have over 60 nationalities there, including teachers and from all the continents, inhabited continents in the world. So you bring all these experiences, all these talents are coming in. I mean, where you kids are equipped with the attributes needed to be able. It's a global education. It's something like they base their education on different attributes, like being a good thinker, being a communicator, being reflective, and all of these factors and involve a lot of self accountability there, and in which they're they're prepared for. It's a global education. They're prepared for it's like lifelong learning skills that they're learning, and how the subjects they intersect with one another, and it's such a wonderful. It's a challenge. It's a difficult to approach. It takes you a while as a teacher. It takes you educator. It takes you a while to learn it, but it feel like for me it's exciting. It's great because it's something like, okay, I can reflect on that now. It's like thinking, okay, did I spend time connecting the dots, or how am I going to challenge them more? How are we going to challenge each other critical thinking, and the creative skills? I mean, like, how do we collaborate with each other?
Yeah.
How are we holding each other responsible for our own process? It's more or less like a really small community, and it's a very important that everybody is voices are heard, and everybody's opinion is taken seriously. And it's such a great feeling for me. I feel like something like it's like a place where I really feel it belongs to me in this education.
Wow. Wow. Beautifully put. And also the thing that you're describing upon where the different subjects intersect, right?
Yes,
Because education has been compartmentalized for way too long,
yes, definitely.
and it doesn't quite respond adequately to the things that are needed right now for us as a human species to thrive and to develop ourselves, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
there are so many things that we can learn from one another,
Yes,
and it only happens from us coming together
exactly.
as a people, in a sense, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, not to knock this because all of us as teachers, we all have lots of burdens. Like in class, no matter which level they are, matter whether it's Havo, Vavio, Athenaeum, uh, and all IB. We all have deadlines to make. We all have to take. We're spending more hours doing things than what we're paid for. We take our work at home. Even if we don't have papers, great. We're still thinking about, okay, what am I going to plan for the next classes? We have all of that. We have all those burdens and everything. But I think it's important that we're able to collaborate with each other. Like, okay, we have to, figure out what for your subject. How can I, what are you doing in your subject that I can use for English and everything, and vice versa. A lot of times over the years I've had, we have meetings, and then I'm here like this, like someone saying something. I'm like, well, how do you, like, how do you do that? Like, how can we do that in class? There's too many islands, like group here, group there, and all this competition stuff. We're in the same building, we're in the same school. Like, we have to be able to take each other seriously for, because, it's a difference between teaching and education. I mean, you're teaching you're teaching for something like instructing something according to your occupation. But when you're educating, you're doing, you're giving instructions like in a way where there's some morality and some social context there, and also you know how you getting them to think critically, how you thinking and getting them to create and not just focus on facts and everything. You know, and all these things. A lot of things like in the stories I read, you know, I've taken stuff from what I've had over the years, which I've learned, and when I first started until now. I never could have thought about doing that when I first started, you know, writing things down. But this is a thing, lots of things which have accumulated inside of me over the years. And I thought, okay, well, you know, even though I don't play the game anymore, but all these experiences I had, you know, I'm thinking, how can I intersect those together? And you know, something that can help, you know, like students and also help parents. You know, like I've had it where, you know, like there's always going to be a dissatisfied parent somewhere. There's always this, but I have to have the facts, you know, in front. You know, if we have that conversation, you're gonna know all the facts. You don't know what's going on. Your child is telling you this. He's going bringing this home, but like I was told, my mother said to me, if you're gonna tell the story, you tell the whole story. So you know, like you coming to me with this half-ass stuff, I'm not gonna play that. I mean, I'm gonna tell you how it is. You know, that's how it is. And you know, like if I had a, I've had that a lot of times as a mentor in the past where, you know, there would be a parent upset, you know, they couldn't child comes with a math test and didn't have his calculator the battery ran out during the test. And you're not sitting in the hall in the class if you're in a classroom and there's 50 kids in there, there's not going to be 50 sockets in there. You got to load it up before you come. Load up your laptop before a class starts. And so, you know, all this kind of stuff. I was like, well, he was told to do that. So you didn't hear the whole story. You know, kids today, they have what I call selective amnesia. They remember what they want to remember.
Exactly. Yeah.
But all the other stuff doesn't get remembered.
Yes, especially, you know, if I would, you know, draw a parallel to the example that you gave prior on telling the whole story, right?
Yes.
You don't leave anything out.
Exactly.
That's, you know, don't be selective on that part as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But these are some of the things I had struggled with when I first started. I mean, like I was told when I was first taught, it was like probably my first 5 years I had to deal with this dilemma that speaking Dutch in the English teaching class. So that was a high premium at the time. When I first started, English was not officially an examination class. That came, I think, in 2013 or something. That it really on the same level as Dutch and mathematics, in the same sense. It's like one of the now three core on the focus on device level. But I was told that I had to do that. But then what happened was I did my best to do that. But then you always had somebody complaining. It was always complaints. So I don't understand them. But a lot of times it wasn't. But it happened a lot of times when something went wrong. When the student didn't get his way.
Selective amnesia again.
Exactly. But then I was, you play what I call the language card, playing the language card. But see, the easy way out, and I've had this also with other colleagues, teaching colleagues who were not, who are also expats here.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine who just recently retired, and he taught in Friesland for several years. He also had that dilemma where if there was something that went wrong, it was always that language card about, I don't understand them. Well, maybe they didn't, but also there was a conflict. It's not like you have a conflict every single class, which, well, maybe some you would within the first 5 minutes, but it's not like every single time you walk in the classroom and I got a bone to pick with you, and I'm gonna just seek you out every time, only if the behavior is not good. But then you say, oh, I don't understand them. Or like, maybe
Only then, right?
only then. Yeah, only then. But when it's good, it's no problem.
No.
But then, like, if you still manage to get a good grade, but then, these are things I had to deal with, or somebody saying, like, that it was always a problem with the language. Yeah, it could have been, yes, and it was, I admit it. And, but then I had to realize for myself, if I'm going to stay in this business, I have to change. Like James Baldwin said, the things you face, a lot of things you face, you may not be able to change, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. So I had to realize for myself, I had to change. So I said it was a summer camp where I was able to do like with Anglia for English. It was like a week camp for students to get extra help for like a summer school for English
Yeah.
language learning. So I did that, and they said to me, "Okay, well, try to teach just only speak English, no Dutch." So I did that. So for a week, only Dutch kids there. So I did that for a week. I was thinking, okay, well, this is something that I'll do. This is something I'll stay on this line, because the other place I had worked at, there was always I endured a lot because of the language part. I mean, yeah, that's just how it was. It might have been some things justified, but it was still was not. It was a lot of inconvenience for me, and also for my development. So once I did that, I spoke only English class, all levels. VMBO, HAVO, VWO, Athenaeum, Gymnasium. Only English. After that, how many complaints did I get because of language? After that, all those years, 0. So I figured that then it's like if I'm speaking English, which is the language you're supposed to learn in this class.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Then you can't say you don't understand me because of English. And also, you get parents that always say like, well, in meetings say, oh, he does a lot of gaming and for English, or like now it's Netflix and all that. People say, well, they learn English that way. I was like, yeah, good for them, but still, is that going to help them on the test? That the all those jargons or something that's not going to be on the test. So I mean, yeah, it's great you're doing that, but how about picking up a book and reading it
or writing something? Yeah,
it's like what Christian says, like the secret to acquire a second language is you acquire it, not learn it, through comprehensive input. So the more you read, automatically the grammar you're going to get, the vocabulary you're going to get. Even like with the context clues, if you don't understand the word, it's like incidental. You have intentional learning, the vocabulary learning. You have incidental vocabulary learning. It's like you learn if you're doing the intentional vocabulary learning, you're learning translating words. But then with incidental vocabulary learning, you may not understand that word there, but then if you continue to read, you're going to understand what the word is within the context.
Exactly.
So all of these things, what you had to do. And also there was times when doing vocabulary tests where I had like, there were, for example, there would be like 150 words they have to learn or something. And they might have been in some of those textbooks. You have all those various textbooks that you have. There are so many of them. There's so many of them. I don't want to get into that too much.
Yeah, I can
commercials
imagine.
things.
I can imagine.
But anyway, you have like for example, you have 150 vocabulary words, and you have some students like, I'm not going to be able to learn all these words. And I'll say, okay, when is it? Okay, just say that, for example, I was when out at the time. I say, well, how many days do we have before the vocabulary test? They say, okay, we have 2 weeks, like 14 days. Okay, how many words can you learn in those 14 days? Maybe like 10, 11, 12 per day.
There you go.
And then you go like one day, and then you go back and learn again. But that was that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But having to go through all of those experiences, and then taking me to now, but looking back, I can appreciate those moments, and being able to and just going back to the language part of speaking English, um, like I wasn't about to fall into these traps of saying which I've heard over the years, from other teachers, what I had when I was doing my master's, when they go visit prospective teachers' classes, and then there will be over 95% of the spoken language in the class is Dutch in the English class. Like Jeremy Harmer said, if you're in a classroom, you're not using the language, you're wasting your time. It's a total waste of time. So I did not want to do that, and I refused to do that. And I was at the point where I was getting more confident in myself as a teacher, kind of like with my basketball ability, where I was growing to my body back then. I was getting more confident in myself, and I also had the same thing as a teacher. Well, I was the point. I was somebody say to me, "Well, you got to speak Dutch in class." I was like, "Well, you can go look for another teacher because I'm not going to do that." And I've also had to a point where I had to say to students, I said, "If you want me to speak Dutch in the class, in this class, in my class, go find another teacher. Go to another teacher. Go find that. We're not going to go there, because I'm not going to have you going home and say to your parents that you can't understand me."
You've done that before.
I've done that, been there, done that, and it didn't work. And I've had the point where I had to also with other teacher colleagues that I've had coming up in the English teachers, prospective teachers, interns. I said, don't speak Dutch in the classroom. It's not going to happen. Because like this, if you're acquiring a second language, you're not going to do it like in your first language, native language, your first language. You did not start off speaking grammar.
No.
And so you don't do that in your second language. I'm not going to talk to my child okay, this is a past tense of this. You walk there or something or whatever, or you're walking there. I'm not going to do that.
It's crazy when you put it like that. Exactly.
Exactly. But these are things that I think that needs to be addressed in the school with management. That if they want someone to come in, they call it. I was called for many years. I was called a native speaker English speaker, but that was only by name, by action. But then, I had at times where you get your final conversation. I've had it where people say, well, they main problem was it's kind of like you get these backhand compliments. You did this good, but there's always a but there. It was always, and a lot of times had to do with, other times it had to do with classroom management as well, where I might have been at times I'd say, okay, you don't want to get out, and all that, you're not behaving, misbehaving, not paying attention. I want to have this person also get attention. You're sitting in a classroom with 30 plus students. You're always going to have at least one that's going to want to have all that attention. But you're going to have to show me, you want to, you want to work. But this person deserves attention too. It can't be that I spend a whole week in the class and not have spoken to that person that wants to learn.
Because of what you're doing right there.
What you're doing right there.
Yeah.
But all these experiences that came up, you go through these things. You have to go through these things. I think sometimes. And I'm glad I went through those things. It's not like the smooth path where you're just going and I've worked with all levels. And I also had a short time where I worked in HBO in Utrecht. So I've seen a lot over the years. So all these experiences are coming back so can be appreciative of what I have now.
Beautifully put. And I can imagine it must have been a struggle Obviously, especially regarding those days where you try to communicate with them in
Yes.
in Dutch as well.
Yes.
I think it was a very good call to throw that out the window, in a
Yes.
sense, right? To
Yes.
embody, let's say, second language acquiring.
Yes.
Especially, children growing up, as you stated earlier. I mean, you talk to them, right?
Yes.
You're not preoccupied
Exactly.
with the, let's say, the technical areas
Right.
of the language, or defining them as such.
Yes.
There's just this one last thing I would like to know, if with permission, obviously.
Yes. Yes.
If I were to ask you, because you've had a very rich development, in a sense, especially growing up in very different contexts and in very different societies as well.
Yes.
Let's say the Dutch one being perhaps a more individualistic kind of approach
Yes.
to societal a society or societal development, in that sense. um if I were to ask you what your, let's say, your wish or your wishes would be for enhancing education, how would you reflect on that, or how would you put that?
Well, I think my wishes are that like the teachers can have more autonomy, like for the subject. If I could speak for English, that the teachers will have more autonomy over what you can teach, and that you're able to. It's not just to prepare them for examinations and everything, that they can be prepared for after, like for to making the world better now. But see, like we get into this, we fall in this trap. I think that we just basing on like preparing them for exams and everything, and that teaching for success. But they have to be able to be, like taught how to think. That's, and when they have to think, they have to think about everything. They have to think about solving, being able to analyze things and evaluate things, and come up with solutions and everything. And I think that has to be emphasized more. And I think that we have to be able to have the teachers have to be on one line with each other. That it has to be one thing, like rule, like certain rules and everything for everybody. It can't be like one person group is doing this, and then the other class they go to, a teacher has to catch hell because something is not done properly, like telephones or whatever, or having coats on in the classroom and all that. It has to be one line, and it has to be a line for management, that they have to be clear to the teachers, and they can't expect teachers to have to do things that which they're not going to be given extra benefits for. I've heard so many stories about with teachers they've been asked to do things, perform tasks in which there's no hours for, and I've heard that a lot, and also being able to like to deal with the load management, because I mean there's a lot of there's so many things that we have to do that call for more than what you paid for. And I would like to also to see that there's no, like, it can't be a one size fits all approach in the classroom. That because if, for example, you have 25 students in the classroom, you have to have 25 different ways to reach them. And if there are students that need to be helped, they need to be helped. I mean, and they have to understand the cultures, like the various cultures within the schools. And I think that's something that's also that needs to be addressed more, because you just can't say like everybody's in this. There's equality. There's a difference between everybody being equal and people having equity. And you have
Exactly.
to understand that equity means that understanding that the school has to understand that not everybody had the same opportunities. That some of us had different paths to go than others. I mean, and that they have to, they also have to be learned from, and they also have to have the same opportunities for success. And they, you might not understand their backgrounds or something, but you have to be able to, or rather have lived through those backgrounds of them. But you have to try to understand them. Don't just label them as a problem. They'll just, like, you have to understand. They have to be able to understand these things in school. and you have to be willing to like they have to know, okay, the current the issues that's going on in the world, that they be educated on these things, and that the curriculum will reflect on those things, that the curriculums are adaptable and all that, and also about the way they're being examined. If I can speak for English, I mean, it's a total, with the IB, it's totally different way of their examinations than the forks on the vice. And so but I had a conversation with someone from there was a convention earlier this year here in Utrecht, not that far away from here, in which there was a booth. They had these different booths, and so there was one with Cito. This guy comes up to me and wants to have a conversation. And I said to him, well, when are your examinations going to reflect some critical thought for these students? Because they're going to have to go to university, and they're going to be sitting next to classmates that have had these years of being exposed to critical thinking and things like self-accountability, all this in interdisciplinary opportunities in the education. Because when you have their textbooks, are going to be in English. A lot of textbooks they have in universities and HBO schools are in English.
Exactly.
Instructions are English. Well, how are your examinations going to reflect on that? Not just a multiple choice questions, not just gap filling
Or reproductive things.
yeah,
right?
regurgitative stuff. How are they going to reflect on that? I think a lot of time, like if I look at that, if speaking for myself, if the examinations were based also on receptive skills and not just reading comprehension, I think there's a lot of fear that there will be a lot of students that that they will fail that test. So I would like to see that students are challenged more with that, because they're going to have to deal with a world. And there was a report I saw that within 5 years there's going to be if you look at the job market, there's going to be less emphasis on memory. There's going to be a lot on resilience and critical thought. So I think it was the World Economic Forum or something, but I read that report. There was a report last year about that. So I think this is a challenge that's going to be needed for the education system here, because now we have AI. AI is an influence, so that will be something that has to be addressed, where how teachers can adapt to that. How can teachers, maybe they can get courses every 5 years, like being able to keep up with the times. These things we have to be aware of, because it's here. I mean, AI is here to stay.
It's here to stay, exactly, yeah.
So how are we going to, as educators, going to continue, like in the ever-changing world? Because it can't stay the same. Like I said earlier, as educators, we either become better or we become worse. There's no saying, we don't stay the same. Just like I learned on the court, these lessons, as a basketball player, this is what we have as educators.
Yeah, it's a very challenging time as well, and it calls for a radically different approach in what you, let's say, what you teach, but also how you approach the thing that you are teaching, right? Where you put the emphasis on.
Exactly. I think
Exactly,
with the basketball mentality, it's kind of like the Mamba mentality. I have in my classroom the door. I was like, 1%. Like doing more 1% more every day. It's kind of like with the Kobe Bryant, like
Yeah.
the Mamba mentality, taking something with going at it with a challenge, with passion and pursuit,
Yeah.
with that no quit attitude. It's like, you get 1% more today than you gave yesterday, and then tomorrow you get 1% more than what you have given today.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you so much for a very valuable conversation and a very, let's say, enriching experiences. The enriching experiences that you shared along the way, and especially along this conversation. Um, contexts are, they are different, right?
Right.
Especially the ones that you lived through. But it's it's very beautiful that you have the opportunity to share all the experiences that you've accumulated along your path, and to be able to pass them on to future generations, for which
Yes.
I thank you enormously. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you again for listening and being a part of this endeavor. Follow us on our socials for more content on the podcast. The username is @meneer Hutch, which is Dutch for Mr. Hatch.